Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:07. It's O'Connor and Company, and Mercedes Schlepp and I are both very calm and happy. Aren't
so
we?
Calm and happy. So is Heather.
We are the calmest and happiest.
So
So is
calm and
Heather Hunter. Very calm and happy. Michael Shelton, not so much. He's always on the edge.
Oh,
our
come
sound
on.
engineer. He is on the razor's edge. He could snap at any moment. Thanks for joining us here on O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 6:35, John Reed is currently a radio talk show host in Richmond, and now he's going to run for lieutenant governor. Don't you get any ideas, Mercedes? I'm staying right where I am. It's 7:35.
Oh,
Dr.
I wanted
Jay
to
Richards.
run for lieutenant governor, but sure, if you want to run, you'd have to move to Virginia.
You should. No. I'll support your candidacy.
You would?
That's a no-brainer. Yeah, I don't know about this time around. It's a crowded field, but maybe 4 years.
Okay,
from now.
but this is going to be complicated because if we're doing the Kennedy Center president and chief administrative officer, add to that running for lieutenant governor. I don't know. That's just way too much.
If Trump
for
can
us.
do, if Elon can do it, we can do it. 7:35. Dr. Jay Richards, Heritage Foundation, on the big vote for RFK today. 8:05. KT McFarland. 8:35. Representative Mike Cloud on yesterday's Doge hearing. That's Mercedes Schlepp, your future lieutenant governor of Virginia. I'm Larry O'Connor, your future Grand Poobah
the
at the
future
Kennedy
president.
Center.
Yes.
Of the Kennedy. Joining us right now is a friend of this program, former spokesperson for the Department of Education in Trump 1.0. And now she's with Defense of Freedom Institute, where Angela Morabito has continued championing the cause of parents' rights, school choice, and fixing the education program in this country. Angela, thanks for joining us this morning. Always good to talk to you, my friend.
Oh, good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, today, Linda McMahon will be undergoing her confirmation hearing to succeed your old boss, Betsy DeVos, who was a great Secretary of Education. And I'm told by Democrats and the education industry that Linda McMahon does not have an appropriate track record to be Secretary of Education. Could you please correct the record, Ms. Morabito?
Oh, gladly. Honestly, they are just out of their minds. Future Secretary McMahon has a really great track record of leadership at the Small Business Administration and also in education. She's been helping lead the charge for school choice. This goes way back, right? Like she holds a teaching credential from college. She's served more than a decade as a university trustee, and she's also served on a state board of education. So she knows the education system very well, but the left is furious that she's trying to disrupt the status quo.
Well, it looks like, Angela, she's got the votes to get through the process. What's the timeline looking at right now for her to get confirmed?
Oh, goodness. Well, that's really up to folks in Congress. But today is going to be a really important kickoff point for future Secretary McMahon to lay out her vision for education that supports President Trump's vision for education of taking power out of Washington, sending it back to the states, and ultimately putting parents in the driver's seat.
Give our listeners sort of a snapshot of what that looks like, because they're going to hear a lot of scare tactics from the local teachers' unions, from local school boards who are in the pocket of those teachers' unions, that by sending money directly to the states and taking the middleman, the education department, out of the mix, that this in some way is going to make it so that kids won't have books or pencils or any basic necessities. The heat's going to get turned off in their local school. Angela, what's the vision here? What will it look like? And will it actually work out to the favor of funding these schools better than how they've been funded?
It will, because without a federal agency getting in the way, more federal education tax dollars can get sent to the states. They actually have a shot at making it into classrooms instead of being absorbed along the way by this huge bureaucracy. So when people really tend to kind of panic about, oh no, the Department of Education is going to go away, sometimes I just say, wait a minute, think about it. Because you want to empathize with people, right, who are rightfully concerned about the state of their schools. I will never, ever fault anybody who is worried about the future of schools because, hey, I am too. But think about it. The Department of Ed is a relatively recent invention. And before it was created in 1979, everybody still learned how to read, write, and do math. In fact, they learned it a lot better than they learn it right now. The Department of Ed is an experiment that just has not worked. Our test scores are in the tank. We can do better by putting power closer to the students themselves, and that means sending it to the states.
Right.
In fact, real fast, Mercedes, can we hear from POTUS on this? Because he actually made remarks yesterday here.
Yes.
Look, the Department of Education's a big we're ranked, so they rank the top 40 countries in the world. We're ranked number 40th. But we're ranked number 1 in one department, costs per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world, but we're ranked number 40. We've been between 38 and 40. The last time I looked, it was 38, and then I looked 2 days ago, it came out the new list. It came out at number 40, so we're ranked 40. Norway, Denmark, Sweden, I hate to say it, China, as big as it is, it's ranked in the top 5. And that's a primary competitor. We're ranked number 40. So if we're ranked number 40, that means something's really wrong, right? And I say send it back to Iowa, to Idaho, to Colorado.
Yeah, I gotta ask you this, Angela, because there is this focus from President Trump that he wants to shut down the Department of Education as soon as possible. We know Elon Musk tweeted out that the Department of Education has been dismantled. They're really going after about, I think, $900 million that they discovered, that they're basically eliminating a lot of these contracts. So how is it going to work? Because I'm very curious, because I do think obviously it goes into the local states, but then and the local districts, but then the reality is you do want to keep some sort of sense of commonality when it comes to curriculums and making sure that the students are not being indoctrinated. I mean, there is an opportunity for President Trump to say, look, there's got to be at least some of these national standards in place. What are your thoughts?
Well, we've tried the national standards approach with Common Core, and it really didn't work very well. But there is a role at the federal level for some very specific things in education. And by that, I mean things like upholding civil rights law in the schools. Right now, the Office for Civil Rights does that, but one of the things the Defense of Freedom Institute has proposed is sending that responsibility over to the Department of Justice. There's also federal student aid. It's the nation's largest consumer lender, but it doesn't really work like a bank should. It's not as consumer friendly as it could be because it's housed within this giant bureaucratic agency. So what would it look like if we spun that off into its own agency? But we really don't want the federal government doing things like setting curriculum, because think about it, if there is a future administration that attempts what the Biden folks have done, which is to infuse their ideology into everything, if the federal department starts setting curriculum, that could turn pretty bad pretty quickly. So we do want to send that back to the states.
Yeah, it's funny, Angela. I hear this a lot, and now, we've been saying, get rid of the Department of Education, get rid of the Department of Education. But now that we're in charge, I hear, well, wait a minute, maybe we can do really good things with this Department of Education. It reminds me of the ring to rule them all in Lord of the Rings. It's like, you want to get rid of the ring, but then once you have the power of the ring, you want to, I won't get corrupted. I'll use it properly.
I think there's a way to do it both. I think there's a way to eliminate the waste. I think there's a way to eliminate, and like you were saying, Angela, like the duplicative functions, right, and put them in the right place. But the reality is you do want to have a little bit of control in terms of saying, listen, you can't have pornography in the schools, right? Let's stop that. And you got to push these liberal states to do this, and you can use it by the yes, sir.
I love you. You're 100% wrong, because there will be a Democrat is going to win the White House again, and then they will have it.
And guess what? They'll bring the Department of Education right back, guys. Come on.
No, they can't. That's harder to do. That is much, much harder to do.
Oh, no, darling.
Well,
we'll have to.
Like Obamacare was so hard to do.
All right, hold that thought, Angela. It's too important, and this is what's going to be debated today in the Senate, and that's why we like to give people a preview. So hold that thought. We'll discuss more in a moment. First, though, it's 6:15. All right, Mercy and I, as we often do, have a slight disagreement here where she says, all right, let's not completely do away with the Department of Education. Let's actually use it for good and force these liberal states to stop teaching, gay porn in elementary school. I get the spirit behind that. I would still refer that to local control, local school boards. We have a disagreement. Angela, you have to, be the tiebreaker
You have to
here.
help us out, because I'm curious.
You worked at the Department of Education, and also you're familiar with what's going to happen today in the confirmation hearing for Linda McMahon. How's this going to sort out?
Sure. So I think there's a middle ground between what both of y'all are thinking. And the fact is, sorry?
I said, there you go. I was just pointing at Larry. This is like our everyday fights that we have.
Whatever.
Well, hopefully I can bring back some peace and some confidence in what's about to happen. And the fact is that we just can't shut down the department straight away, right? It takes time. And what we're about to see from Linda McMahon is how to make really great use of that time. We're starting to see it already from the White House with these executive orders saying, no, you're not going to indoctrinate our kids. No, you're not going to force women to compete against men on their sports teams and encounter men in their locker rooms. We're not going to tolerate that anymore, what the Biden-Harris team tried to push on the country. And a lot of those issues where you do see that federal role happen within civil rights. I mean, I think it's very important that one of the first things the Trump Education Department has done has said, we are not going to go after school districts that remove explicit books from their shelves. This said that schools and local communities have the right to take away books that are explicit. And that's not a book ban. You can buy it on Amazon. It's not a ban. You can go get it if you want it. We're just not going to facilitate that in the schools with taxpayer dollars. To me, that is a civil rights issue, and there is absolutely a very big federal role in enforcing federal civil rights law in the states. So that's not going to disappear. What is going to disappear is a lot of wasteful spending. I mean, check out what the DOJ has found just in these early days of, countless millions of dollars in DEI contracts. There's a contract, $1.4 million to observe a mailroom. I'm sorry. What are we doing here?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
we talked about this yesterday, Angela. And meanwhile, parents engage in these bake sales where they're, baking cupcakes and selling them at their elementary school so the teacher doesn't have to dip into her own pocket to buy pencils and crayons at Office Depot. And by the way, I'm not minimizing that. I know that teachers really do that, and they make sacrifices for their kids in the classroom. But maybe if we weren't spending $100 million on a stupid DEI program, they'd have the money for those crayons.
Yes. Okay. Our minds went to the same place because when I saw these numbers coming out, I thought if I was a teacher who had had to, dip into my own pocket to fund pencils and notebooks and everything it takes to make a classroom run, I would be irate that the federal government threw around money this way in a way that doesn't help students learn. It doesn't help teachers teach. All it does is line the pockets of adults who don't have students' best interests at heart. So I'm very optimistic that the days of all of that sort of hidden spending that people didn't see and that people could get away with just kind of acting in their own best interests and not putting students first, those days are over. And I'm very excited to hear more from Linda McMahon at her hearing today along those same lines.
Yeah. All right. So do you think that she gets confirmed? Do you think, or is it going to be hostile? Because let's face it, we know how much power and money the teachers union has. Are they going to prop up their Democrat allies there, their puppets, and are they going to make it hard? Is it going to get ugly today?
Well, I hope it doesn't get ugly, but I know that she is going to face some of those challenges for people who are desperate to defend the status quo. And they're going to say things like, defend public education. Okay, 1 in 3 eighth graders is basically functionally illiterate. Less than a third can read proficiently. They can't defend that. There is no defending the failed outcomes of our current system, but I do expect to see our friends on the left try, because the teacher union business model depends on it, sadly. And the Trump administration is a threat to that. It says we're going to give power to the parents. We're not going to let these union bosses call the shots.
I would recommend an Office of Parental Rights within the Department of Education. I think that's what they need. Get rid of all the waste, get rid of all the mismanagement of funds. But I do think you do need some sort of federal presence, and it could be out of the White House. I mean, we see Tom Homan, for example, as board czar. You could have
Education
someone
czar.
as I know.
Sure.
that would be an education czar within the White House. That could definitely work, and then get rid of the excess. I will say, I spoke to several congressmen who were concerned about the confirmation hearing for Linda McMahon because Elon Musk had put out that he had already dismantled the Department of Education. So she'll be facing some of those questions. But I know Linda, and she is such a rock star, such a tough lady. And look, she turned SBA around, and she will surely turn the Department of Education around.
All right. Well, we'll be tuning in today for this confirmation hearing, a very important one, and one that is near and dear to our hearts here as we focus on education issues, and we want to keep them as local and controlled by parents as much as possible in the neighborhoods. So, Angela Morabito, thank you for joining us today. As always, you are a rock star yourself there over at Defense of Freedom Institute, and it's always good to talk with you.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. I hope y'all have a great day.
It's 6:23.